Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We had this small inconsistency in a technical issue, but we fix it. Now, we have the gentlemen that are coming from Canada, Toronto right now. So they woke up in very early to be with us, with the CIO Council members, and to be with us at 8th edition of CIO Council National Conference. They represent the company named Infotech. And I have to admit that I met those guys several weeks ago with the European CIO Association. I have to admit that I didn't know too much things about their activity, but and I was surprised to hear that they're very old and they are very good into the research and consulting industry. And honestly, I received very good materials and very good advices in terms of various trends and technology topics. So today we have David Glazer, Research Lead CIO, Strategy and Innovation, and Adib Ghubril, Research Director, CIO Practice. Gentlemen, you have a trends and technology in a post-COVID world presentation. We are more than happy to listen to you from Canada.
Thank you so much, Hugo. It's our pleasure to be here, and I'm going to jump right into things. We're going to talk a little bit about the insights that we've been uncovering through our research, some of the technology trends that we've observed, and some recommendations for what you should do about it. But let's start off with a pop quiz. What do HP, General Electric, General Motors, IBM, Trader Joe's, Salesforce, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and Disney, what do they all have in common? I will answer it for you. They were all started in and around an economic crisis. I believe it was Winston Churchill that said, never waste a good crisis, because crisis can equal opportunity. In fact, 3 out of 4 executives believe that the crisis that we're currently in, the global pandemic, is going to yield an opportunity for their organizations. But whether it's an opportunity or it's not, 90% of executives believe that it's going to fundamentally change the way you do business. So the question becomes, will you grow? Will you shrink? Will you transform? Or will you collapse? Well, we want to avoid that. So let's talk about what we've learned from who is winning right now. First insight. Those who are winning are doubling down on digital transformation. It's no longer an if, it's a how fast can you go. For example, looking at the national healthcare system out of the UK, they were able to stand up their telehealth capabilities in as little as 14 days. How were they able to do this? Well, they did it because they had an established ecosystem of startups that they had been incubating that were able to sell them solutions and develop solutions for them quickly. So they did not do it alone. Next insight is you need to establish a foresight capability. What do we mean by that? We mean scenario-based planning, having scenarios as a trigger for an innovation activity. Example, Zomato is a food delivery platform out of India. Their share price has skyrocketed because they recently entered into the market for delivering groceries. How did they move so fast? Well, they had an underlying technology platform that enabled it, but they also were maintaining an ongoingly updated diversification strategy that had different scenarios in it that served as triggers for different innovation ideas. So they already had this initiative ready to go if the right conditions were in place. And so they just had to press go. And the last insight to think about is becoming a platform for good. The rules are changing. It's not just about profit. It's also about purpose and what good are you doing in your community, in your country, for your customers, for your citizens. Example, American Express, they have launched an incentive during this pandemic time. If you make a purchase at a small business, you get a cash back incentive. So this is helping small businesses who are definitely hurting right now, but it also helps American Express ensure that more businesses accept American Express as a form of payment. So two birds, one stone, helping out the little folks in the small businesses, but also making sure that they take American Express and extending their reach. Now, let's talk about you, CIOs. A year ago, we talked to a whole bunch of CIOs, and they told us that they felt that their role was going to be focused on business transformation. Over half of them were going to be focused on business transformation over the next 2 to 3 years. I would say, if anything, this global pandemic has accelerated this trend. I believe that if I was to ask the folks on the line today if they were going to be focused on business transformation, it would probably be upwards of 90-95%. And why has this been happening? Well, it's because we're in the middle of a transition, technologically speaking. In 2015, there were 15 billion connected devices on the planet. And by 2025, the expectation is that there's going to be 75 billion connected devices on the planet. That's 10 connected devices for every single human being on the planet walking around right now. And if anything, the pandemic has accelerated this because we're all so distributed. We need these devices to maintain connections with each other. Now, this transition is creating a number of shifts in the technology dynamic that we're going to talk to you about today. The first is the transition that AI is making from the cloud to the edge. The next is the changes that are happening in robotics. Trust is shifting, and the way we perceive management of data is changing as well. Let's start with AI. From the cloud to the edge. What do we mean by that? The processing capabilities of an AI algorithm are being pushed to a network's edge, to the device level. That means where the data is collected, it is also processed, captured, analyzed, and the insight is provided at the edge. Now, here's a new example that is arising as a result of the pandemic. Of course, everyone right now is concerned with biosecurity. Now, biosecurity, of course, is an emerging concern. AI models, in this case, can be trained in the cloud and then deployed to the edge to reduce latency. For example, 𝐂𝐎𝐏 AI is a new company that runs an NVIDIA Jetson processor and can receive input from 4 cameras at once. It generates responses in under half a second, referencing these images against 8 different AI models with about 8,000 different class of model. Now, what does this mean? It means if someone is coughing in a public environment, the camera can pick up that they are exhibiting symptoms, and it can make a decision at the camera level. That's what Edge AI is. It's instantaneous decision-making at the level, not relying on a network connection. So what do you do about Edge AI, this change that's happening to Edge AI? Well, first, it's who you derive inspiration from. We think you should pay attention to what Microsoft is doing. Microsoft recently rebranded their IT department as the Consumer Services Engineering Branch. This is a mouthful. It's no longer the IT department. They've made this change because they pilot changes to their solutions to the business users first before they pilot them or more broadly deploy them to the customers. Now, you can do this too when it comes to AI adoption. For example, if you're going to have a customer service chatbot and a service desk chatbot, don't launch them at the same time. Launch the service desk chatbot first, learn from that deployment, incorporate those learnings, and then go customer service after that once you have incorporated those learnings. Now, so you're taking an inside and out approach for AI adoption. Now, from a process perspective, the fact that AI is pushing to the edge is going to change your governance and architecture from a data perspective. Now, this might have some benefits from a privacy perspective as well, because less data actually has to be transmitted from the device to a central processing location. So there's some definite new benefits. Now, trend number 2, and forgive me, folks, we got a lot to talk about, so we're going to be going quite fast here. But trend number 2 is the shift that's happening from an automation perspective. We are developing more symbiotic relationships with computers. there is with robotics rather, there is an insight I'd like to share with you, and that is a human with a robot is more capable than just a human or just a robot working on its own. So it's not about taking people out of the equation. It's about harnessing humans working with robotics. Now, in some cases, we're working very closely with robotics. For example, Thibaut has sensors. Thibaut is a tetraplegic from France. He's got sensors in his brain that are operating this exoskeleton, and he's been able to move as a result of this. So it's a wonderful application of technology. Not everyone needs this, and not everyone wants sensors in their brain if they don't need it. I think I'll be I'll wait for version 30 of Neuralink, maybe version 40, before I'm willing to adopt something like that, right? And then from a different perspective, robots are working with us maybe when we're not in our facilities. For example, this is a UVD robot from a Danish company here. The consensus is right now UV light can kill the coronavirus. So these robots have been deployed across more than 50 countries in hospitals, and they are autonomously roving through these hospitals, killing the virus with the UVD light. So another example of robotic automation. A company that we think that you should pay attention to is 𝐕𝐈𝐑. 𝐕𝐈𝐑 is a new startup, but they are providing a new type of service that is quite interesting. It's remote observability. Think of the concept of a SCADA system where you're observing how all your systems are running. However, this is for all your automated processes, especially in a distributed situation where we're all working from home. If you do have a location that is working, that is using autonomous robots in that location, 𝐕𝐈𝐑 is a platform where you can observe how all this automation is running and making sure that it's running effectively. Now, from a process perspective, what should you be concerned with? You should be concerned with UX design. In most of the digital strategy engagements I have been on in the recent past, there has been an initiative to improve IT's UX design capabilities, the ability to do journey mapping, things like that, conduct observation studies of users and how they're working with technology. And that's the key. You're now designing environments where people are working in harmony with technology. So IT needs this skill moving forward. Now, trend number 3, we've talked about some of the benefits that we can get. Biosecurity, automation, these are awesome benefits. However, there's also some new risks that are arising as a result of all this technological change. I'm sure you folks are heard about the recent breach in the UK. There was a leader of an organization, an energy company, I believe in the UK, who had a phone call from their CIO in Germany. Unfortunately, who they thought was the CEO, in Germany, who they thought was that actually wasn't. Either that German CIO must have had their own podcast, or they were having their conversations listened to. But whatever the case was, there were some cyber criminals that were able to create a deep fake of that CEO's voice and use it to dupe the UK leader. And as a result, they wired 250,000 euros to an account controlled by the cyber criminals. So I don't think anyone has 250,000 euros to spare right now. So that really hurts. So because of these new breaches, we're going to be relying on new solutions that will distribute trust across networks in order to help us solve these issues. Because we can't rely on any central or individual, centralized node or individual to solve these challenges. So in some cases, we'll need blockchain-based solutions. In some case, simply decentralized architectures will be what enables this. There's a solution called Factom, which is a blockchain-based solution that's been used to prove it's called provenance, the origin of a piece of content. It's been used in legal cases already in China, as a matter of fact. So Factom is another word to pay attention to. One of the new applications of distributed trust is in contact tracing. Word on the street is that contact tracing is much more well received from a privacy perspective if it is running on a decentralized architecture like what the Apple and Google partnership is all about. And for them, the key is the decentralizing at the diagnosis and matching stage. So contact tracing is a big shift or new application that is pushing this trend forward. But one company that we think that you should pay attention to in addition is Walmart. Walmart is mandating that all of their leafy green suppliers get on their food trust blockchain with them. So they are using IBM's food trust blockchain. And if you sell spinach, if you want to sell spinach through Walmart, you have to be on their blockchain. This is because, or likely because, there was an issue with tainted lettuce coming out of California a couple of years ago, and now they want to be able to have supply chain transparency and traceability for their leafy greens to avoid risks. What are the implications of this type of trend, though? The implications for an IT department are that your organization may at some point either be pressured to or willingly enter into a smart contract with another organization, which means your systems will be speaking together. And so there's going to be more endpoints, more ways to enter your network. So you need to be focused on security, measurement, and also develop an understanding of what a smart contract is and what it does. Last trend. None of this works without a steady pipeline of data. They say data is the new oil. It is also the new equity, meaning that if you can control a certain amount of data, you can train algorithms, and those algorithms might give you a competitive advantage. And if it does, then your stock price might go up. And so that becomes equity. Now, you cannot maintain control of these data sets unless you demonstrate the appropriate amount of what we call digital ethics, things like algorithm explainability, managing to privacy standards, things like that. An example, Project Greenlight out of Detroit. Essentially, it was a Detroit police initiative to leverage camera footage to maintain crowd control during COVID, to make sure that there weren't too many large gatherings of people happening. Well, the opposite effect happened. There was a protest on the basis of demanding Project Greenlight be eliminated. So, in addition to human rights, equality, big issues like that, people are also willing to protest privacy issues. So this is a big shift in terms of the sentiment towards managing privacy. And it just so happened that the police ended up withdrawing their bid to renew the funding for this initiative 10 days later. So the protest killed the initiative effectively. The key change that's happening when it comes to the management of data and the use of algorithms and how we need to behave is explainability. This is something that we think is going to be increasingly important for people. If you're making some type of claim, especially let's say to the government, if you're making like a land housing benefit claim and you're denied that claim by an algorithm, the government needs to explain to you how that decision was made. Similarly, a mortgage application, things like that, things that are becoming increasingly automated, they need to be explained effectively. Now, an example organization to look at, there's two actually, I'm cheating here a little bit. The first is Apple. Okay, Apple 10, 15 years ago, if you saw Steve Jobs get on the stage, he would be showing you a new product. These days, if you see Tim Cook, hopefully we'll see him on a stage sometime soon, but when he gets up on stage, he talks about managing people's privacy, and that's become the marketing vehicle of Apple. The second organization you should pay attention to, again, is Microsoft. Why? Because in addition to quality, security, and accessibility reviews of their code deployments, they also have added an ethics review to their deployments. So if you're going to release a new set of code, it is being vetted to make sure there is no presence of bias or that's mitigated, to make sure that the algorithms are explainable, things of that nature. So they actually have a gate in place, and this is something that they've put in as a measure of due diligence. So pay attention to what Microsoft is doing. Okay. To conclude, was this a trend presentation? Yes, it was, but not only a trend presentation. It was also a presentation of the future platform for business transformation. We believe that this is going to be the makeup of the technology that organizations are going to be running on to transform. You will input data through the autonomous edge. You will carry out work through symbiotic relationships between people and robotics. There will be distributed trust mechanisms in place to ensure the right things happen, right place, right time. And if you are able to maintain an appropriate amount of digital ethics, then you can create that output of data equity, and that pipeline of data will keep running through this platform. So before I leave you today, I've got 3 questions for you to think about as you digest all this information. I know it's a lot of information. I know I spoke really quickly. Thank you for paying attention. The first question is, how will you plug into this new ecosystem? What are the partnerships that you need to make? Like I said before, you can't do this alone. If you try to build everything yourself, you'd be 10, 20 years behind all the time. So how do you plug in? What partnerships do you need? The second is, what are the scenarios where you can benefit from human and robot interaction? No one is going to beat Amazon by automating jobs away. They are better at that. It's about how you can solve new problems by working with robotics. So people plus robotics, automate the stuff that your employees no longer need to be doing, but unlock their problem-solving capabilities. And finally, how can you become a platform for good? How can you apply these technologies to improve the experience of your customers and your citizens and your employees? How can you apply these technologies for resilience? That's a big word right now. How can you make sure you bounce back when something bad has happened, or better yet, avoid that bad thing from happening altogether? And finally, how can you build or maintain trust between your network of partners? Now, without delivering these benefits, you're not going to have the motivation or support to do any of this transformation work. So this is a really important point here I want to leave you on, and that is how you deliver these human benefits of technology. Hugo, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. I hope I did it within 20 minutes. I didn't look at the clock, so sorry, I was a bit wrapped up, but thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, it's basically a real pleasure to have Infotech with us. Very interesting presentation and very interesting view of the future. And I think we have a lot of information to digest for. But let me ask you something very quick. So
Please.
How can Infotech, this Canadian company, to help CIOs from Romania or even from European countries?
Absolutely. So when it comes to either building your strategy or executing on the initiatives, we've got process implementation guidance. We've got blueprints that can help you actually implement these technologies. And the key thing with our offering is that it's research, but it gets used. It doesn't necessarily just get read. So the whole idea is you, by the end of the research, you have done the thing. You have implemented the technology. You have executed on the project. You've stood up the capability. So we're interested in where the rubber meets the road, and we want you to actually do these things. So whatever it is, if you're setting the strategy, we can help you do that. But then when you get to the initiative level on the implementation side of the equation as well, this is where we unlock more of our value through our research, through access to analysts like myself and Adib, and through our guidance and our offerings like workshops and things like that, where we deliver them remotely through very similar fashion to how we're discussing right now.
20 seconds answer. Let me ask you, are we going back to the old normal? And if yes, when?
Adib, 20 seconds.
We're not. We're not. We're going to reinvent how we go about our everyday. This is a beautiful opportunity to redesign our urban spaces, to reconceive our cities, to reconceive our workspaces. I think it could be brilliant for somebody to rethink how you go about your everyday with less clutter, with less traffic. It could actually become a more civil approach.
Well, very lovely answer. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your presence to CIO Council Virtual Summit. And I do believe that we will see you again to our next CIO talks, or maybe to our next CIO Council conference, maybe live, maybe after we will have a vaccine. Thank you very much, David and
Thank you.
Adib. Thank you very much, and keep in touch. Thank you.
Pleasure's all ours. Thank you, Hugo.
Take care.